So good day and welcome to an exclusive preview of RAPS' new leadership offering called the Advanced Strategic Communications Program for Regulatory Professionals. My name is Tiffany Bellardi, Marketing Manager here at RAPS. In today's webcast, we will provide an overview of our new leadership program, introduce you to our distinguished faculty leaders, and invite them to share key program details along with their enthusiasm for this innovative opportunity. We will cover the program structure, what it entails, and how you can become a part of this exciting initiative. So let's get started. I'd like to introduce you to our program faculty. Our first faculty member is Nancy, an expert in professional development for government and business professionals in regulated industries. She serves as an adjunct professor at USC's Alfred E. Mann School of Pharmacy and has also taught at George Washington University. Nancy currently teaches at FDA staff colleges and district offices. Previously, she was special counsel for the Advanced Medical Technology Association and received the Vice President Gore's Reinventing Government Hammer Award, along with the FDA Commissioner's Special Citation. She began her career as an attorney with the U.S. Department of Justice, handling FDA enforcement cases. Additionally, Nancy is a retired commander of the U.S. Navy. Our next faculty member is Richard DeRicio. Richard develops and presents training for regulatory affairs and quality system professionals. He began his career at FDA supporting field operations and managing inspections of medical device and pharmaceutical manufacturers. Later at CDRH's Office of Compliance, he reviewed compliance actions and served as a sterilization sciences expert. Richard led global clinical quality, regulatory, and government affairs teams at Abbott, J&J, Covidien, Pfizer, and others. Richard also served as VP of Medical Health Services for TÜV and SÜD, overseeing SE mark approvals for North American manufactured medical devices. To round out this trio of experts is Roseanne Malikian. Roseanne leads a global regulatory affairs team overseeing the Department of Life Cycle Management of medical devices for cataracts and glaucoma. She began her career at Abbott, combining regulatory affairs with research science, and now manages global regulatory approvals for Johnson & Johnson Surgical Vision's largest business franchise. Roseanne is dedicated to talent development, supports business development, and participates in international device standards meetings. She also frequently presents to health authorities on novel technologies and clinical trials. And in a few moments, we will introduce you to Natalie Damrow, the volunteer ambassador for this leadership program. Natalie brings valuable experience and expertise from her career to this group and will share her insights and reflections on recent courses she has attended, taught by our faculty. So let's now review the program overview. The Advanced Strategic Communication Certificate Program consists of 4 training courses, each lasting 3 hours. Participants are encouraged to attend all 4 courses. Each course will be recorded. If a participant misses a session, they can access the recording. The virtual classes are designed to engage participants and foster behavior change through interactive elements, encouraging critical thinking throughout each session. There are 2 program series scheduled for 2025, the first in Q1 and the second in Q4. Attendees who complete all 4 courses will earn 12 credits. Registration fees are shown here. The availability of this course is limited due to its highly specialized content and the personalized attention provided to each participant. To ensure an optimal learning experience and foster meaningful interactions, we have set a cap on enrollment. So this allows us to maintain a high standard of instruction and ensures that each participant receives the support and guidance they need. So using polls, chat, and breakout rooms, the participants will employ their critical thinking skills and collaborate with their peers, analyze case studies, solve problems, practice communication techniques that they can apply immediately after the class. Each course has its own objectives, and after completing the course, attendees will be able to develop clear, concise communication strategies for crisis situations, predict how various department heads will react to regulatory challenges, craft presentations that preemptively address stakeholders' concerns, secure agreement on alternative solutions that align with organizational goals, discuss methods for communicating critical information to regulatory staff in a manner that maintains a department's positive culture, analyze benefits versus risk for different courses of action. You're probably asking how you can get a certificate for attending these courses, so here are the details on how to do that. So once you attend and complete each course, you will be asked to take a 10-question true or false knowledge check. You will be given 3 chances to receive a passing score, and a passing score is an 8 out of 10 correct responses. Once all 4 courses are complete and you have received a passing score for all 4 courses, you will receive a certificate. So now it's time to talk with our faculty, Nancy, Richard, and Roseanne. Tell us more about the certificate program.
Hey, great. And thank you, Tiffany, for that wonderful introduction explaining all the background information, which was really necessary. And the way we got to this point is what happened is Richard and I and Roseanne were looking at the RAPS competency framework. And almost all the classes were probably at the beginner level or maybe at the mid-level level. And we looked at the skills that people at the senior level would really need if they wanted to be successful. And so taking those traits that were in the competency framework, we organized a course exactly about that. We wanted to make it widely available, and we want everybody who wanted to take advantage of it to be able to do that. So we thought the best day to give this class would be on a Friday afternoons, and we would schedule the classes 2 weeks apart. Now we had to figure out, we wanted not only to learn from us, but you should also learn from the other people in the class. So we decided to limit it to a certain level. And Richard, can you share with us our thinking about the level that we have to be a certain level or above to be in the class?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us, and thank you to the RAP staff for putting this all together. I'm really excited about this course because in these, we decided to use a course that's dedicated to senior manager and above, because we want you to work together in these small breakout groups. And there, in the past, what Nancy and I have seen is there's a lot of energy, and everyone in the group will bring slightly different experience to what we have seen as regulatory affairs professionals, and especially in some high crisis situations where the effective communication of the implications of an action, whether it be a recall or a request for additional information letter that was unexpected, is how that can be communicated in a very positive, concise way. So we want the attendees to this course to have an experience level where each of us will understand something new and gain something to take away from the course.
Now, what Richard was talking about is there are going to be breakout rooms. And the way we're going to do the breakout rooms is very exciting. There'll be different breakout rooms in different sessions, and we want everybody to get a chance. So we're going to have a different leader for each different session. So you will get to be a participant. You'll get to be a leader in a breakout room, which will be really fun. And during that breakout room, we're going to have loads of discussions. We're going to give you hypothetical problems that really occur on a day-to-day level, and you'll get to come out with a solution, and we'll compare solutions. We'll also give you an opportunity to give you a template to do short presentations, and then you'll get feedback from the other people in your particular breakout room about how you did. And so that feedback will be enormously valuable. It won't be threatening because we only give you, when you're giving presentations, groups of 3. So it will be nice to know that maybe you say, ah, or maybe you move your hands, and you'll be able to really change your behavior with that feedback. And as Tiffany said, we want to hear from everybody. So there are going to be polls, there's going to be chat, there's going to be breakout groups. So it's not a lecture situation. It's an active, everybody will be an active participant. we had an opportunity. RAPS was so great. They allowed us to deliver the class at Convergence this year as a pre-con. And everybody was really enthusiastic. And I like to just give you some of the comments that they said. One thing that kept on coming up again and again is they really appreciated the fact that the situations were the type of situations that they occurred on a day-to-day level. So it wasn't theoretical, it was really there. They also loved the critical thinking that was involved in the role playing. So again, it wasn't passive. They had to use their creative energy and enthusiasm, which was fun. They enjoyed the opportunity to discuss the situations with other regulatory faculty, with other regulatory professionals. And Richard, Roseanne, and I all have a very diverse background. So they liked being with seasoned professionals who could see things from different points of view. Well, now what I'd like to do is I've kind of given you a little background, and what I'd like to do is turn it over to Richard, who's going to be talking about what's going to happen at our first class, which is avoiding disaster mistakes when briefing high-level agency officials. Richard.
Thank you, Nancy. So one of the goals of this is to make sure that as regulatory affairs professionals, we are seen as a key player in the organization. And we will, whether you're a senior manager on a high-performing product development team and you have to deliver a message maybe to the team that there's going to be a delay in an approval, perhaps some additional engineering work is required or additional clinical studies, we want you to be able to deliver that in a clear, concise way. But there's more than that. Part of it is the preparation. And we're going to give you tips on how you can anticipate what other people on the team, whether you're on a product development team or on the executive management team, of what the other players are thinking about when you're delivering this message that could have a severe impact on the company. You have a lot of key stakeholders that you could be communicating with. It could be your own staff, it could be senior management, and it could be key opinion leaders with whom you're meeting to discuss the status of a project. I'll tell you a little bit about what we're going to look at in Module 1. It'll be a case study where a company has one product that delivers a very unique therapy. It's more effective and it's safer than other products on the market. FDA investigators come in and they raise a question about how the company is handling complaints and making necessary reports to FDA. And then the investigators contact the center, and you know what happens then. The center starts to look at it and they're saying, we think a recall is necessary. Well, beyond that, the company has some restraints. They don't have a lot of components. They can't afford to do a recall because they can't make replacement inventory. So we're going to be talking about some ways that you might be able to stay on the market and how you would create that relationship with the investigators and with the reviewers at the center so that you could stay in business. That's the kind of thing we'll do in the first module. So Nancy, let me pass it back to you to talk about how you're going to talk about executive presence.
Well, it's very interesting with executive presence. I've done a lot of research on this, and they've conducted studies, and people are really not aware at all at how they come across at others. They interact, they think they're doing just fine. And I want to get a check on this. Richard, do you believe you've had a long career and you have lots of people working for you, have you seen this unawareness that people just talk the way they want or do what they want and they're not really conscious of what's coming across?
I hope there's not a particular reason why you asked me that question, but
No,
now that you say it, I mean, we all create we create a perception of people that we meet, that people we see on the screen on a TV show or in a movie, but we probably don't think about how we present and how people might perceive us by our actions. So yeah, probably, I think in my case, I could be giving that more thought. Yeah.
So what we did in this course is realizing that that really is the case. We talk about executive presence. One thing that many people do, and we've taught a lot of courses here, people like to talk with the stream of consciousness. They like to go on and on and on and on and keep on talking until the person says they're right. And this is quite annoying, but they don't realize that they do that. So to stop people from doing that, we've created a template of the idea that you should give a 30-second talk. And the subjects would be what, so what, now what. If you cover everything in that 30 seconds and then you let the decision maker ask you questions, you will engage them. And at AdvaMed, I was the lawyer, And I used to go on and on and on, but once I used this template, it was wonderful, and people really listened to me, and no more eyes glazing over. So the people will learn that when we finish. We also wanted to talk about other characteristics that people don't have a clue about. They don't really know how that holding your hands matters, your posture matters, your eye contact matters. And these are all the things that go into executive presence. So we make people aware, we show pictures, and we discuss that. And it was very interesting in the pre-con. We spent much longer in the pre-con on executive presence than we thought, because people were just fascinated of the things that they took for granted, and they all promised that they would change. So hopefully they will. Okay, let me now turn it back to Richard, and he's going to talk a little bit about getting to yes, mastering the art of presenting regulatory positions to staff and stakeholders. Richard.
Thank you, Nancy. So in this one, the situation involves a company getting an unanticipated request for additional information letter from FDA. And this is causing shockwaves throughout the company because they're asking for additional clinical trials, which is going to be something that has a devastating effect on the budget. The clinical research group is overwhelmed with their current workload, and we're going to work through that, but with an interesting twist. And that is that in the breakout groups, you will be assigned the roles of different functional heads. The CEO, the head of finance, head of quality, head of business development, and all 6 or 8 different heads. And you will discuss from your own experience, and we'll, of course, be providing ours, of what these different business heads will be thinking about, whether at the manager level, director, VP level, what they will be thinking about when you are starting to communicate some news that will have a devastating effect. And sometimes these are professional senses they will have, or they'll be thinking about their department, the impact on the department. Do I have the resources? Will I have to put aside a project that's very important to the company? And sometimes it's personal. Will this affect my bonus? And so what we're going to help you do is anticipate these things, in a sense, doing sort of a risk analysis or risk assessment on what the reaction is, so that you can prepare presentations that anticipate and preempt the questions that will be asked of you and put you on the spot. And instead, you can have these answered in your presentations. So this will be a little bit of a different switch from how we ordinarily would look at problem solving. I'm just going to continue here because there's another thing that I think all of us have faced, and I felt this would be a good thing to put you together in breakout groups. And it has to do with those situations where there's a mandate that all departments have to reduce expenses. And one of the risks to a regulatory department is we don't have large departments. And usually everyone has a key role, and sometimes it's knowledge-based, sometimes it's relationship-based with a health authority such as FDA, or it might be a health department in a foreign country or notified body. And also that where people might say, let's cut off travel. Well, maybe we had planned to make a critical trip to FDA or to Japan to discuss an upcoming approval. Sometimes it might say you don't need a consultant. Well, yes, we do, because that person has specific product regulatory knowledge for this particular type of submission. So we'd like to go back to that. And I think probably all of you, as I have had several situations where this occurs, not necessarily because of a regulatory or quality program, but perhaps just to meet investor expectations. I also want to mention why Roseanne is silent here. I actually hired Roseanne from USC. Nancy and I were giving a talk there several years ago, and Roseanne came up and asked Nancy and me what she could do as she was getting her master's in regulatory science and a PhD in biological sciences, what she could do to sort of become more aware of the profession and be more recognized, which is one of the topics that Nancy and I talked about. We said, why don't you write an article in Focus about the USC program? She did. Her research was in ophthalmology. I was at Abbott Medical Optics. Long story short, we hired her. The company is now part of J&J. But I know she was in a meeting. It was pretty critical. And I'm sure you faced that as well. So she might be joining us in a bit, but we'll continue here because we've all been through this on the pre-con. We developed the slides together. So I'm going to go now into module 3. the little known secrets for building effective teams that embrace diversity and open communication. And Roseanne can jump in as soon as she arrives. Diversity, unfortunately, in the political arena has been politicized, but it's such an important element of the workplace. And when I think about some of the most talented employees that I've had and people that I've known, a lot of them are in as many as 8 categories that define diversity. And here's the thing, if you have a recruitment vision that embraces diversity, you are less likely to overlook people that have very important and specific talents. And it could be product knowledge. It could be they're excellent in regulatory or they're great communicators. So we're going to be talking about how to make sure in your organizations that you create an environment that encourages people to apply, that can actually give you a competitive advantage because you can better understand what types of, say, illnesses affect certain diverse groups, maybe a way to better design devices that will be used in a certain population. So we want to give you an experience in working in a breakout group. We'll give you the tools. We'll talk about the pros, the challenges of creating a diverse environment, how to celebrate it, sustain it. And then we'll work in breakout groups to create a plan so that you can bring this back to your organizations and benefit from this competitive advantage and creating a much richer organization. I know that you'll hear from Joanne. I know J&J, I was with J&J for 10 years. We had the Credo. It talked about one of the 4 elements was the employees. And what Roseanne mentioned at the pre-con is that J&J has a diversity initiative, and they also are now reviewing the Credo every 2 years to update it consistent with the current environment. So with that, Nancy, I'd like to sit back to you.
Okay, so we talked about diversity in personnel that you should be hiring and how you can maintain a wonderful, great staff, people with all different backgrounds. But there's also, as Richard said before, diversity when it comes to the objectives of different department heads. Different department heads have their own agendas, have their own goals, have their own ideas where they're going to get resources and bonuses. And so we decided that we've created a problem where a company has to determine whether or not to recall a product. And what we do is we put people in breakout groups. We put people of 6, and each one of those person has to play a part. A CEO, someone has to be the head of regulatory, someone has to be the head of R&D, someone has to be the head of quality. And we give them each a secret agenda that nobody knows about. And what they have to do is they have to think about their secret agenda, and then they have to negotiate should they recall the product or not. And their secret agenda is really different than maybe the company agenda. And it's just fascinating to find out at the end what the different groups come up with, because it depends on how strong each person is in their assigned role advocating for their agenda. And I remember when we were doing this, Richard watched the people, and he had some observations. And Richard, would you I was so busy teaching, I didn't have the observations, but Richard really did. So Richard, can you give us those observations that our students saw?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I think what was amazing is that everybody was so engaged. And I think one of the reasons why is that the agendas that we've created that each of these groups have, it's not just, finance saying, that, oh my goodness, this could create a financial disaster for the company, but they have individual things too. Things like, my boss doesn't really like me, and if this is a problem, I could lose my job, or this is going to affect my bonus. So the nature of the personal and professional agenda goes pretty deep. And we found that people were just trying to hold their guns while the regulatory person was trying to achieve a result that was the right one for patient safety. And it was also the right one in terms of credibility with the health authority, but also looked at the business sense. One of the things that strikes me is in terms of, I was very competitive in terms of wanting to get products approved before others. I love this profession. And I also wanted to be a player. I want, when you think of the CEO, CEOs think of business performance and profitability. Who do they think about? They think about sales and marketing and the other groups we mentioned. So we want them to always bring regulatory into the group because we give them the products that drive the company's profit and profitability and create the reputation of the company as a company that helps improve people's quality of life. So what we saw in the room was we gave them a generous amount of time. We said, do you need more time? A lot of hands went up. We gave them some additional time, and finally we just brought it to a stop. But there was a great deal of engagement. That's sort of the long answer to your short question, Nancy.
Okay. So let me move on to avoiding, the last session is avoiding landmines when communicating sensitive information. So I teach this session, and the reason I teach it is that I was a lawyer, I was a prosecutor, I was a defense lawyer, and I kind of understood what people don't understand. And so the number one thing is what people love to do is they like to write confidential on all sorts of records. And they think, oh, it will be protected when we give them to these records to the FDA. They won't release them at FOI. And let me just do it. Let me do a fact check here. Richard, when you were in all these organizations, did people do that? And did people really realize the ramifications?
It's absolutely correct. I mean, people do write confidential. In fact, it wasn't until I actually sat in on your course on dangerous documents that I realized how that term is not as ironclad as people really think. And I think in the course you'll be discussing, when confidential can be used and when it might not protect the company and the individual the way we probably think it does.
And what we want people, I mean, my goal is, because I understand this, we want people to go back and train their company so people really will understand it. Another thing that happens to a lot of why companies get in trouble in product liability is that the salespeople need training, and the salespeople like to make little notations on files or records or emails, and these things really come back to haunt them. And again, we talk about you need to train your salespeople, and then we explain why. There's something in the field called a cover your CYA memo, which is cover your rear area. And a lot of times in companies, the regulatory person or the quality person thinks that maybe we need to recall a product, or maybe we need to submit a change to an application or a new application to FDA. And there's a lot of discussion, and the company doesn't do what the regulatory professional believes it should do. And then the regulatory person doesn't want to be held responsible. So what they do is they write a memo saying, I don't think we should have done this, but the company did it anyway. This can have disastrous consequences for the company and the individual. And we talk about what to do in those instances when you do not agree with the company decision, and how to refrain from writing these things, because it can come back to haunt you in terms of punitive damages and compensatory damages if you are ever sued. The other thing that people do not understand, and again, as a prosecutor and a defense lawyer, I use this to people's disadvantages. When you're writing minutes of meetings, they put all sorts of information in the minutes, and then lawyers will in fact take a sentence out of those minutes, out of context, ask them to read it, and it really causes problems. So I teach people how to write minutes so that will not occur. And the last thing that I teach in this class is they had insurance companies, and what the insurance companies did is they went to court and they looked at, in our field, in medical devices, all the words that cause trouble, all the inflammatory words that came up again and again. And what we do is I share this list of inflammatory words, and then we think of synonyms, and we talk about ways that you should not use these words. Like I'm telling people, I don't like it when they write out of spec, or this is defective if they get a bad component. What I'd rather them say, if they ordered a 12-inch board and it was 11.9 or 11.8 inches, they should write the facts. They should not say out of spec or defective, because once you've done that, you can't be using it. So you have to be very careful. I want you to write the facts all the time. And these are the type of tips that we give to people. Well, now we've kind of talked all about, you understand the content of all 4 of our sessions. And let me turn it back to Natalie. Do you have any questions for us?
Yeah, thank you, Richard and Nancy. I'm so excited for you both to be facilitating these courses. Not only are you 2 regulatory rock stars, but being a senior manager, it's really hard to find a course that kind of finds that delicate balance in between soft skills and hard skills. More often than not, they give you just examples, but really having case studies that reflect the environment is really critical. So could you share a little bit more about that? What kind of case studies or scenarios will be used in the workshops, and will they focus on specific industries or specific regulatory areas?
You know, I could speak to that. We have made sure that we have both pharmaceutical and also medical device. We have experience in biologics and diagnostics as well, but those will be the key areas that we can use so that we're covering a broad scope of products that are regulated and the products that in the US companies we're typically working on.
To build on what Richard has said, they're actual problems. They're problems that companies have had that they have to solve. And the interesting thing that, again, the comments that we got is these are the things we face on a daily basis. On a daily basis, what should we do for a request for additional information? What should we do when we attend an agency meeting and the agency wants us to recall our product? So it's not hypothetical. And this kind of distinguishes itself from the other courses that RAPS gives. RAPS does a wonderful job with Northwestern and they do Cornell, but we focus on the problems that regulatory officials face on a day-to-day with our products. And so that's where we are.
You know, I would just add something to that as well. You know, at the end of the session that we did, the pre-con, Nancy asked people what they would take back to their jobs. Now, one of the things was just about everybody talked about confidentiality because of the things they learned that they shouldn't do and be careful about. But other things were like using the what, so what, now what technique. They were going to use that to add structure to their presentations. And then the other big takeaway was the ability to anticipate what others are thinking and designing presentations that preemptively address the issues that they might have so that you can deliver a message that won't have a big shock, but comes with a solution. It's not just the problem, you're actually delivering a solution. And so I think that was a takeaway that people will feel much better prepared. Natalie, I know are you on mute? In case you're trying.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing about your experience. And I've been fortunate to attend some courses with both of you, and I'm constantly in awe of not only your experience that you've shared, but also your ability to engage the participants. Can you share a little bit about some of the feedback and engagement that you've had with previous course participants, specifically giving individualized feedback, and how you've seen them grow in their communication skills throughout these workshops?
Well, what we do in our courses is that we encourage everybody to participate. A lot of times we like to ask people to help with the slides. So we'll ask them what their opinion is, if they agree or they don't agree. The other thing I'm always interested in is having people develop their skills in terms of presentation and argument and critical thinking. So I will ask people, do they agree with this why? And then I will ask other people for an opposite opinion. It's always very safe, but everybody is constantly talking and participating. And we find that when people get an opportunity to make presentations, to ask the questions, they really learn much more than if they just listen. And there's a lot of doing, much more than listening. It's a doing class.
You know, I'm pleased to see that Roseanne has joined us. And Roseanne, I gave a little bit of background about your background and also that I knew that a meeting had come up that you had to attend to. But I wonder if you could just say a few words about, you know, we talked a little bit about this whole idea of preparing for meetings. And you had mentioned when we were texting back and forth that I think it was yesterday, you and another senior business leader were preparing for a presentation. You might want to tell us a little bit about how that relates to what we're going to be teaching in January.
Absolutely, I'd love to. And again, apologies everyone for me joining a little bit late. Perfect example of when a regulatory professional needs to be called into a senior leader meeting and be prepared. So having these types of presentations and preparing for them is so important, and understanding your role as a regulatory professional and how you can communicate to senior leaders both up and across your organization in an effective way that demonstrates your level of understanding and credibility, and also at a certain level to a higher level to explain overall your approach to regulatory strategies and how it does impact the business. So the level of detail that you can zoom in and zoom out of is so important. And I think this course really helps us walk through that when we're trying to deliver very important messages, whether they're difficult ones or ones that are critical for project success.
Roseanne, another area we talked about, and you might just mention this briefly, is it's not germane to the kinds of things that have to do with recalls or requests for additional information, but something that we deal with a lot, and that is a mandate to reduce expenses. And maybe I'll make this a two-part question. One is to share a little bit about how J&J, through its credo and its culture, embraces diversity, and the other is, if you've had to go through cost reduction, how that might be a beneficial thing that we'll be covering in this presentation.
Yeah, absolutely. So J&J really prides itself on its credo and the initiatives that it has to embrace diversity. And one example of that is the ERGs, so employee resource groups that J&J offers to employees to give them opportunities to connect with like-minded individuals, to learn about different cultural backgrounds, and really embrace that as part of a driver for innovation and success in the company. And Richard, to your second question regarding budgets and cost reductions, that's such an important skill set to understand the complexity around, because as you develop in your regulatory career, you will have more and more responsibility for your functional budget and managing your resources and headcount and having to make sometimes difficult decisions around that. So being able to communicate how that does impact your business and making those tough decisions is an important part of growing in your regulatory career. And I think balancing what your company's needs are and what where you're going as a future organization and how you can help your team stay successful with the resources they do have.
Yeah, thanks, Roseanne. And to that point, one of the things we covered in the pre-con is that you really need to engage your own staff, because they will have ideas that perhaps we might not in a senior leadership position. And then, as part of this entire workshop, is that how to communicate what we need in terms of our essential requirements to senior management when we're presenting what we can contribute to cost reductions. And again, be preemptive, be convincing, and be clear in communicating that.
Just to add one other point to that, Richard, it's such a great way to position it, right? Because if you have to make a difficult decision, how you can reach out to your cross-functional stakeholders to explain the importance of a specific project or the business relevance that it has and the resource needs you have, you might even have an opportunity to get those resources from another functional area, right? And that level of communication, transparency is so critical to be successful in that space.
Right.
We've been talking a lot about our questions and our thoughts, but I wonder, do we have Tiffany or Natalie, do we have any questions from the attendees? And maybe if we have them, can you pose them to us so we make sure everybody gets their questions answered?
Yes, thank you. So, excuse me, now that our faculty has shared their vision and expectations for this program, it's time to answer your questions. So please post your questions in the Q&A box. And if you'd like to address your questions to a specific person, include their name in the question. And let's go. Let's go. Let's see. Wait, take me just a moment here. Okay, so the first question here is, how is it different from other RAPS courses?
If I may answer that, RAPS does a fantastic job of substantive things that regulatory professionals need to know, the regulations, the law, the application of that. RAPS has started an initiative to teach the basic skills of communication within a company. And they do have a certificate program that we are hosting, but it really did not get into the advanced communication skills which is really talking to the agency, talking to the CEO, getting buy-in from the other department heads. And so again, this course matched the competency framework of the things that senior regulatory people need. And it's precisely to the research that RAPS did about what you need to be successful in your company. So we cover those topics.
I think the other element of that too is that we're using these breakout groups. And it's not that you have to do your own work and the instructors don't do anything. There is plenty of information that we will share with you as part of this, and a lot of things that are just the tips and tricks of things we've learned over the course of our careers. So, but the idea that we just find that in these breakout groups, there's a lot of information that comes out that could never be done if it were just the instructors talking to a class and we didn't have any interchange.
Wonderful, thank you. We did have another question coming in here. For those who are in an entry-level position in regulatory affairs, should they take this course?
And actually, there is a certificate program that we are teaching for entry-level people, which is the Effective Communication Certificate Program. This program is for more senior people. As Richard said, you have to be a senior manager. And the whole idea is in the breakout groups, we want people to draw on their experiences. And so we urge the junior people should take the basic course, the basic certificate program. And then when they get more senior, they'll have more information to contribute when they're in the breakout rooms.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any other questions at this time? Oh, here we go. Dear Richard and Nancy and Roseanne, I attended the RAPS Convergence workshop that you hosted in Long Beach. Are there still new topics in this course? Thank you.
Well, I can start that. I know that we are going to build in new case studies and also there are some things that we can bring in. For example, because of my quality background as well, I was always fascinated by risk assessment. And so we're going to incorporate an exercise where we will talk about how a company can take a request for additional information from a health authority and convene a top-level group, cross-functional, of everyone that's going to have to be a player in responding, and how you can literally do a risk assessment that lays out the probability of successfully addressing the concerns, what has to be done, who has the action. So we'll dive into things like that we didn't have time to do during the pre-con. And Nancy, Roseanne, you might have some ideas as well, but I think there are a number of things like that we'll do.
What I'd like to do, and this is not fair, but everybody who's taken a course knows I'm not always being fair. I'd love to go back. What Richard, Roseanne, and I goal is to change your behavior, to give you an insight that you didn't have. And I wondered if that person who asked the question would either in chat or verbally just explain what was their main takeaway, because I think the people would rather, we can tell what we're trying to teach, but I'd love the person to share what they actually heard or what they're going to do differently. And if you don't want to do it, we certainly understand.
And while the person is doing that, I think in our pre-con, we had a total of about 5 hours and 45 minutes. In this program, we will have 12 hours. So our plan, and we've already started doing that, we're starting to add the content that will continue to get you all engaged, but will actually take this to another level beyond what we were able to do in the pre-con.
Yeah, and I think that's really good feedback. We can certainly expand to other concepts and issues that you might face, right? Not only in the form of an AI letter, but complaints with respect to claims or if there is a recall that you have to be in charge of, or impacts to licenses. So there's so many different scenarios that we can plan out and map out where you can exercise those communication skills and understand who your critical stakeholders are and what their expectations would be.
I think one of the interesting things that I faced, and also this came up in the regulatory exchange, is where you have a product that is used off-label, and the doctors that are using it just say this has to stay on the market, but we're realizing as a regulatory affairs professional, maybe with a regulatory body increasing our awareness of this, that we have some clinical evidence, but we have to decide what to do. And I think to the point that Roseanne, you touched on, there are things in advertising and marketing and claims and promotion that we can get at in this, because these are some of the other very tough communications when key opinion leaders are saying your device is great for this intended use and we don't have that approval. And the other thing is this early engagement. I'll give you an example. When I mentioned earlier about regulatory affairs being a player, in my fairly recent experience, I was always invited when the key opinion leaders came in. And we talked about all these great new devices that we would be able to make or additional claims and indications for use. And I said, why am I the only person here from regulatory when you have all these people here from R&D or marketing and sales? Because I want my people to be as excited so that they will say, I want to work on this project. I want to deliver a strategy that will get us to market and get there to market before our competition. So we'll be able to spend a lot more times on those sort of very real scenarios that all of us face pretty much on a day-to-day basis.
Wonderful, thank you. I just wanted to add the question about the entry-level position and if they should attend this course. RAPS does offer an effective communication certificate program that Nancy mentioned in Q1 and Q4 of 2025, and you can find it under raps.org/events for more information on that. Do we have any other questions? Oh, go ahead.
Natalie, you know, you've been in the field many years. You have a very good basis as I talk to you about regulatory. Of all the topics that we have talked about so far, which ones are you really interested in? If you have to pick one or two, what would be your top priorities?
Ooh, that is definitely a difficult question, Nancy. And I think, you know, overall, the continuous thread throughout all of the courses is being a clear and effective communicator. Because in regulatory affairs, we are responsible for translating requirements, whether it's speaking to a health authority or different stakeholders within the organization, understanding not only what we say, how we say, and the long-lasting impact. So I'm excited to see that concept translated throughout those very good elements and areas that you've highlighted. And I'm kind of curious, you know, as someone who's taken some of the courses, I think there was this serendipitous moment where I had taken a communication class from you all right before we had an FDA meeting, and we used those feedback to tailor our slides. And one of the greatest highlights of any FDA meeting that I've had, they said, oh my gosh, these are some of the best slides we've ever seen. It's so clear, specific, and eloquent. We don't have, you know, any further questions. We really appreciate what you have. So could you maybe share some examples of how other past participants have applied their learned skills?
I can, but I will, and thank you so much for that question back. But I just saw our former attendee at the pre-con in chat gave us a comment. So maybe Tiffany will read that comment when she answered my question, what's your take home? Tiffany, can you read that to us?
Yes, so it says the workshop was great and I took a lot of insights for improving my communication skills. I have been sharing this new knowledge with my team, avoiding landmines and docs, passing a message in a brief and precise way, etc. I'm looking forward to diving deeper in the new case studies, for instance, the risk management topic mentioned by Richard.
I mean,
Great.
in response, but a wonderful response. You know, I ask a simple question and to go into depth. So thank you so much for really giving it with your answer. And now I have to apologize to you, Natalie. What was it? Can you repeat your question? Because I was so impressed with her response, I forgot.
No
Sorry,
worries, Nancy.
It's true.
And actually, I think that, you know, the speaker who posted in the chat did answer the question in a way, is kind of understanding what are some of the takeaways and kind of examples from past participants of applied skills that they've learned and brought to their companies.
And now I can answer that. So to kind of redeem myself, which is fun, people really like the executive presence because they didn't think about executive presence, and now they're totally aware. People also liked from where we go over dangerous documents and how you can get in trouble. And I think people have come up to me since that course and have said, I remember what you said, and now I never write an email without thinking that other people can read it, or I'll stop writing confidential on everything and tell my company it's not going to matter because FDA has procedures that they'll only really protect information that's confidential. So I'm thrilled that I get the opportunity. I'm going to a lot of meetings these days and actually have met some past attendees. And what Richard, Roseanne, and I are all about is you've invested in time. You know, it was 5 hours, now it's going to be 12 hours. We don't want you to waste your time, and we really want you to change your behavior. And if we can get you to change your behavior in any way, we will be successful.
One of the ways that I receive feedback is that we linked in and connected with some of the people that were at the pre-con. And so we had feedback through that way. And people did say they really enjoyed it. They hope that we do it again. One person who was there from Europe said that, could you ever consider bringing this or giving this presentation by webinar in Europe? So there was a lot of feedback about that change of behavior. So it was edifying to get feedback like that from people that were at the pre-con and that we continue to communicate with through LinkedIn.
Great, thank you. Are there any other questions at this time? Just give it a moment here.
While we're waiting for questions, I wanted to add one other thing to what Nancy mentioned earlier about executive presence. And I had a recent example of hearing feedback from a senior leader about other employees on our team regarding their ability to present complex information, where you could be a great regulatory professional with a very strong technical expertise, but if you can't communicate that in a simple, clear way to stakeholders, that could be limiting in your career advancement. So it's just really to underscore the importance of the ability to communicate your points in a way that's helpful, Natalie, to your point, exactly to the health authority, like the FDA, or to your company group chairman when they're trying to understand the complexities around the approval timelines. So I think that's just to reiterate Nancy's point about the value that executive presence can really have to your career.
That's a great comment, Roseanne. Yeah, thank you.
Wonderful. Well, we're coming to the end of our time. We have time for one or two more questions. If you do have them, now's the time to ask. I'll go ahead and pull up the screen here on how to register. So you can still type in your questions, though, if you have anything come up. But I do, RAPS would like to thank you for your time and your participation in this informational webcast. If you are interested in attending this workshop or would like more information, please reach out to our RAPS staff at workshops@raps.org or visit our education events page at raps.org/events. And it looks like there is a survey that's been added to the chat. And yeah, so to register, you can go ahead and get out your phone and your camera for that QR code. And then if there's no other questions, yeah, I think that would, oh wait, there might be one. Can we get the recorded video? Yes, we will be sending the recorded video along with the PowerPoint presentation to everyone who's attended this. So thank you.